looking for the correct windows here. Welcome to our final day at Signum University's summer reading camps covering C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Again, Ms. Raimondo cannot be with us, so I will be taking us through the last two chapters. My name is Sharon Hoff, and I welcome you. I'm glad to see every one of you who's here now with me live today and in the future. Welcome, and let's enjoy the last part of this wonderful journey. Okay. Everyone is ready. Remember, you can use the question box to send in comments or questions from yourself or your group if you're an organizer. And we do ask that you please contact us, communicate with us. Everything that you can tell us about your camp and your experience will help us to shape our camps in the future, give you more of what you want. And hopefully it will help us to extend some feelers out. We're looking to try to get some support, things like grants, endowments, that sort of thing. And the more data, the more information we have about how you are using our program, how successful it is, all of that information will help us to get the support we need so we can continue to bring these to you, directly to you, free of charge, for your pleasure, enjoyment, and edification. All right, let's begin. Yes, Beck, you went to Hobbit camp. Excellent. I hope you enjoyed that as well. Wonderful. Again, have you or your parents send us emails. Tell us how it went. Tell us what you liked. It's great. We're really eager to hear from you all. Okay, here we go. Redemption and going home. Let's see what happens. Now, let's recap. Where did we end off yesterday? Aslan had returned with the sunrise. The deeper magic had worked. Lucy and Susan are with him. And we know that the witch and her creatures, all of her soldiers, battle-ready people, have gone off to go and attack Peter and the other good creatures of Narnia. But we haven't really heard about what's happening to them yet. And Aslan has just launched himself over the White Witch's castle walls. And now we're going to see what happens. We've already got a few more comments. Let me just look at those. Bella's going to go to the Wrinkle in Time. That starts on Monday. Thank you, Bella, for reminding me to tell you all. Wrinkle in Time starts on Monday. And let's see. Oh, Katie, you're going to all the camps. Right on. That's commitment. That's commitment. But hey, it's fun, right? Okay. All right, so we've recapped. Aslan has jumped over the wall with two girls on his back, all kinds of power. Let's see what he finds. Well, we know what's there because we were there with Edmund. The girls don't know what's there. Aslan, I'm sure, is not going to be surprised at what he finds because everyone knows that the White Witch was turning everyone to stone statues. Any of her enemies, anyone who resisted her. So let's see what the plan is. Oh, Becca's doing all of them too. Awesome. All right. What is Aslan doing? There we go. Let's find out. So they've already gone over the walls. They've seen all the statues, hundreds of them, and been shocked by what they saw. Now let's see. I guess Lucy was talking, and Susan says, "Hush," said Susan. "Aslan's doing something." I expect you've seen someone put a lighted match to a bit of newspaper which is propped up in a grate against an unlit fire. And for a second, nothing seems to have happened. And then you notice a tiny streak of flame creeping along the edge of the newspaper. It was like that now. For a second, after Aslan had breathed upon him, the stone lion looked just the same. Then a tiny streak of gold began to run along his white marble back, Then it spread. Then the colors seemed to lick all over him as the flame licks all over a bit of paper. Then, while his hindquarters were still obviously stone, the lion shook his mane, and all the heavy stone folds rippled into living hair. Then he opened a great red mouth, warm and living, and gave a prodigious yawn. And now his hind legs had come to life. He lifted one of them and scratched himself. Then, having caught sight of Aslan, he went bounding after him and frisked round him, whimpering with delight and jumping to lick his face. Okay, that's amazing. That is a paragraph of imagery, right? Of description that really tells what's going on. Jubilee says Aslan right now, might know since he knows everything. Okay, so he would know what was in the witch's castle and what was going on. And prodigious. Yes, Jubilee, I will tell you what prodigious means. I'm going to go through the whole thing and I will hit prodigious, I promise. Because when C.S. Lewis wrote this is again a moment where the narrator pops himself into the story and tells you something. Okay, he describes something. He really inserts himself to talk to the reader, to describe this. He uses the word I, who's telling you this story. And he uses an example that maybe not all of us would know. At the time that C.S. Lewis wrote this, most everyone had a fireplace that worked manually, like it wasn't a gas fireplace where you turn on a switch and the gas comes on and it's a fake fireplace kind of a thing. I love them, don't get me wrong. But a lot of people now don't have that experience. They don't have a fireplace or even a campfire or any experience with a fire that is used to warm a room. So I am very glad that he used such specific descriptions to let us know what that looks like, because it's not something that all of us have experienced, even though he says, I expect you've seen this happen. So the paper doesn't catch flamey fire all at once. It just kind of gets this small edge of smoldering, glowing. It is on fire, but it's not a huge flame. And it's just this line that works its way up the paper. That's what he's talking about. So that's that line of smoldery, molten-y, bright gold fire crossing over the statue. So that's what he means there, the tiny streak of gold and going over him. Then the word prodigious. Prodigious means a huge whole lot of, a very large amount of, or a very, just very large, really. That's what that means. Prodigious. So a prodigious, huge yawn. I won't expose you to my large mouth. I won't give you an example of that. Let's see. Yes, I love his descriptions. It makes it so easy to paint a picture in my head of what is happening. Yes, Jubilee, it does me too. Yes, and it's very exciting, right? So what I also find interesting as we go down this wonderful description is that it appears that the statues, while they are statues, are kind of just sleeping, right? He yawned when he awoke, so he's just kind of been asleep. So in a way, that's a little comforting because, you're worried about, are they thinking are they still thinking when they're a stone statue? Have they been tortured this whole time being frozen in stone? But it looks like maybe they were just asleep, right? So we get that little clue. And then what's really funny, in my opinion, is you have a lion who is, even though he's not Aslan, he's a lion. And lions are very majestic. They're large predator cats, and they have really nothing to be afraid of, and they seem to probably be quite serious, and they're lions. But what does this lion do when he is brought back to life, and he's in the presence of Aslan. He bounds after Aslan, frisks around him. You know what frisking means? It's like a little, it's basically he's acting like a puppy, right? He's frisking and whimpering. Do cats whimper? I know kitty cats, like little kitties, will frisk. They'll, pounce about. But do they actually whimper? I don't think so. This lion is acting quite a bit like a puppy, like a dog. And I just always thought that was quite funny with the delight and jumping up to lick his face. He's acting like a little puppy, which is fine. I'm not saying he can't be a puppy, but it really always strikes me kind of funny to imagine a lion behaving this way. Yes, Jubilee, it makes it so easy to paint a picture. Katie has said, oh, I made you yawn. Okay. Funny. Yes, isn't that an effect when somebody yawns, you yawn too? All right, let's move on. All kinds of life everywhere. Everywhere the statues were coming to life. The courtyard looked no longer like a museum. It looked more like a zoo. Creatures were running after Aslan and dancing around him till he was almost hidden in the crowd. Instead of all that deadly white, the courtyard was now a blaze of colors. Glossy chestnut sides of centaurs, indigo horns of unicorns, dazzling plumage of birds, reddy brown of foxes, dogs, and satyrs, yellow stockings and crimson hoods of dwarfs, and the birch girls in silver, and the beech girls in fresh transparent green, and the larch girls in green so bright that it was almost yellow. And instead of the deadly silence, the whole place rang with the sound of happy roarings, brayings, yelpings, barkings, squealings, cooings, neighings, stampings, shouts, hurrahs, songs, and laughter. Wow. That is some imagery, again, that C.S. Lewis is using. But if there's a time for an author to overload on description and imagery, now's the time. I mean, what joy. It's not just giving you an image of sights of what it looked like and what those things are doing, what those creatures are doing, but it really gives you a sense of the joy and the energy and the excitement, the life. Aslan has breathed life into all of these creatures who were lost, and he's brought them back in all their colors of life, all the excitement and vigor, vim and vigor, right? That means all kinds of just energy, right? So it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Now, let's pick this through. I'm going to look at your comments to make sure you're not asking what specific words mean. Yes, the giant. Thank you, Bella. Let's see. Bella says, giant Rumblebuffin said something about the witch and the lion is hounding Aslan. Yes, that's true. That's true. All right. Let's see. I think most of you will be able to know what these words are. One thing that I find interesting is that Lewis uses the word of indigo to describe the horns of unicorns. Indigo is like a dark blue. Whenever we see artists drawing unicorns, they're always usually like white, pure white. And their horns are glistening and maybe pearlescent and pearly. But in Lewis's world of Narnia, he chose to give the unicorns dark blue horns. I thought that was interesting. And he describes all of the trees and their colors. And an interesting point is that I think so far the only dwarf we've really encountered is the one who's the henchman of the White Witch. I could be wrong, but it's nice to see in this group we do have dwarfs that are good, that had been turned to stone, so clearly they had opposed the witch. So not all the dwarfs in Narnia are bad. That's good to note. All right, let's move on. Oh, my goodness. And here is the artist's idea of what that might have looked like. All the trees, there's the unicorn, the satyrs, the centaurs, and of course the giants. Let's get to the next one here. And I have one more comment. Ah, fluorescent violet. Yeah, that could be it. That could be something that we often see with unicorns. That's true. That's true. Thank you, Bella. All right. Does Aslan forget any of his followers? Is he gonna like miss somebody? Is there gonna be somebody's little statue, a little mouse statue, or one of the little squirrels, you know, or any kind of little creature? Are they gonna get stuck in a cupboard as a statue and get lost and get forgotten about? No. Here we go. Now for the inside of this house, said Aslan. Look alive, everyone. Upstairs and downstairs and in my lady's chamber. Leave no corner unsearched. You never know where some poor prisoner may be concealed. And into the interior they all rushed, and for several minutes the whole of that dark, horrible, fusty old castle echoed with the opening of windows and with everyone's voices crying out at once. Don't forget the dungeons. Give us a hand with this door. Here's another little winding stair. Oh, I say, here's a poor kangaroo. Call Aslan. Phew, how it smells in here. Look out for trap doors. Up here, there are a whole lot more on the landing. So those are the calls that everybody is making. Everybody's pitching in. Everyone is going to help Aslan find everyone else. Nobody's getting left behind, not just because Aslan is going to find them all. Now, I expect if he was left to his own devices, yes, he would find them all. But everyone is helping. Everyone is coming to find everyone else. Nobody's going to get left behind. Interestingly, if you're not familiar, there is sort of a little rhyme that most kids at the time that C.S. Lewis wrote this story would be aware of. They would know this. The upstairs and downstairs and in my lady's chamber. That's from a little rhyme. That was well known at the time. So he stuck that in there. All right, let's move on. Oh, we've got one more comment here. Right. No, Bella, no. Bella says no, he wouldn't leave anybody behind. And Jubilee says, no, I don't think he would have missed anyone because he tells everyone to look around. That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Okay. Mr. Tumnus. Remember Mr. Tumnus? But the best of all was when Lucy came rushing upstairs, shouting out, Aslan! Aslan, I've found Mr. Tumnus! Oh, do come quick! A moment later, Lucy and the little fawn were holding each other by both hands and dancing round and round for joy. The little chap was none the worse for having been a statue and was, of course, very interested in all she had to tell him. And you know she is going to be telling him the entire story. Every little detail that she can squeeze into those moments, right? What joy. Oh my goodness. My goodness. Now that is being, that is a joyful, joyful reunion. That's the word I want, reunion. Okay. It's amazing how just the little time that Lucy spent with Mr. Tumnus, they became such close friends. That doesn't happen often. Sometimes people call those types of friend a kindred spirit, which has to do with, like, it makes it feel like they're your very family that when you meet them. You seem to click, you just enjoy being in each other's company, and you never tire of each other. You know how to just be together and be comfortable. That's Lucy and Mr. Tumnus. That's Lucy and Mr. Tumnus, and that's precious. And I hope someday that everybody gets to experience that kind of friendship and that kind of connection with someone. All right, it's a great example of that C.S. Lewis gives us. All right, how does Aslan's ransacking look different from the White Witch's ransacking? Because remember, she had her agents ransack Mr. Tumnus's little dwelling, his little cave, and it was all topsy-turvy and torn apart and left in tatters. And when she would ransack the little party of creatures who were celebrating what Father Christmas had brought to them at the beginning of spring, it's just a mess. And she leaves behind almost death, right, in the form of the statues. So that's her version of ransacking. What does Aslan's ransacking looks like? Let's see. But at last the ransacking of the witch's fortress was ended. The whole castle stood empty, with every door and window open, and the light and the sweet spring air flooding into all the dark and evil places, which needed them so badly. The whole crowd of liberated statues surged back into the courtyard. It's interesting. He still refers to them as statues, but they're liberated. They're free. They were once statues, but now they are free. That's what liberated means. Right. Beck says, what would it look like? Pink horns, white bodies, and maybe lavender colored eyes. Oh yeah, so that's what your idea of what unicorns often look like, right? Okay, here we go. All right. So his ransacking looks like he has maybe cleaned house, right? He hasn't left it a mess. He hasn't left it worse than what it was. His ransacking actually improves things, right? He's brought in the spring. He's brought in the light. He's cleaned it out. There's no more fusty, dark corners or few smells, remember? Right. So that's what so again, we see Aslan completely the opposite to the White Witch. Completely the opposite to the White Witch. There's no way that they layer. There's no way that they are the same. They are the opposite. So how does Aslan treat his people? Again, remember, we saw way back at the beginning with how the White Witch was treating Edmund from the very start, and how she would treat all of the people. She declared herself the Queen of Narnia, and yet how did she treat her people? If she was the queen, they would be her people. How did she treat them? Let's see how Aslan treats his people. And with a great deal of bustle and cheering, they did. The most pleased of the lot was the other lion, who kept running about everywhere, pretending to be very busy, but really in order to say to everyone he met, did you hear what he said? Us lions. That means me and him and me. Us lions. That's what I like about Aslan. No side, no standoffishness. Us lions. That meant him and me. So here's another way that Aslan is so different than the White Witch. Aslan says us lions. Aslan includes all of the people of Narnia. They do the job together. They cleaned the castle together. They worked together. He welcomed their help. He joined with them. Did the White Witch ever do that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. She kept herself away. She separated herself. She treated the people of Narnia as if they were her enemy, that must be kept down, that must be controlled. And here Aslan is calling them to join him, and even bringing him to say, us lions, right? Which so delighted that little lion, right? Okay, so everybody's cleaned up at the castle. Oh, okay, Bella is saying that lion was kind of being a braggart. I can see that might be the way you would think of that. But if we were going to be generous, which it's always nice to be generous when you think somebody else might be behaving a little badly, think of truly how thrilled that lion must feel. He's probably so full of joy. I mean, you know, Aslan, being in his presence, seems to put joy in everyone around him, right? When he's joyful, when his energy is up, it exudes to everybody else. I'd almost say that lion might not have been able to help himself. to be so happy and so excited and so joyful to be included with Aslan. It probably was really more than he could handle, right? So on the one hand, yeah, you could say he was bragging, but on the other hand, you might think, but how could he help it? Oh my goodness, this is Aslan, right? Right? Katie says lions are my favorite animals. How delightful. That's great. And Jubilee says, the White Witch was basically treating the people of Narnia as slaves. Well, that's a fact right there. And anytime true slavery, like we understand it, not just somebody who has been taken on into your household as a servant because in the olden days, sometimes people were brought into households because they needed protection, because they didn't have anywhere to go. And people would treat them very fairly and treat them well. And they were all kind of part of the same tribe, the same team, as it were. But a lot of times, many people would take advantage of those weaker people and treat them as slaves. And that's always that sort of sense of you are less than human. You are not worthy to be treated well. You are not worthy to be given reasonable care and consideration. And so, yes, the White Witch did treat them like slaves. They were less than her. They were not worthy. They were put down and only there to do her bidding. She had no concern about their feelings, their needs, only insofar as maybe keep them alive so that they could keep serving her. Very true, Jubilee. She did treat them as slaves. Beck adds that cats are his favorite animal. Well, Aslan, lion, and it's a large cat, right? All right, let's move on to the battle. Let me check my slides. I'm doing pretty well on my time. And I do, let me take a moment, kind of at the halfway mark here, to encourage you guys to think of, since this is our last day, be thinking of any thoughts, questions, ideas, things that struck you through the whole book, something that you kept thinking all along the way, something from the beginning. I'll do my best to answer those at the end, and I'll try to give us some time to do that. I have my own example of something that I would share that I remember from when I was a kid reading it for the first time. And so I'm going to share mine unless you guys pepper me with all kinds of comments and questions, and then I'll just take yours. Okay, the battles and how it was won. Here we go. Then they came out of the narrow valley. Oh, right. Aslan, Lucy, all of them are heading out to the battle because they know that the witch is battling Peter and all of the others, right? Okay, so here we go. Then they came out of the narrow valley, and at once she saw the reason. There stood Peter and Edmund and all the rest of Aslan's army fighting desperately against the crowd of horrible creatures whom she had seen last night. Only now, in the daylight, they looked even stranger and more evil and more deformed. There also seemed to be far more of them. Peter's army, which had their backs to her, looked terribly few. And there were statues dotted all over the battlefield, so apparently the witch had been using her wand, but she did not seem to be using it now. She was fighting with her stone knife. It was Peter she was fighting, both of them going at it so hard that Lucy could hardly make out what was happening. She only saw the stone knife and Peter's sword flashing so quickly that they looked like three knives and three swords. Okay, so this is Lucy. This is Lucy's perspective. This is what she sees as they come out of the valley to the plain, to the flat area where the battle is taking place. All right, and that is what she sees. She's describing what she sees. So that tells us how the battle's been going. There's many more of the witches' army. There's fewer of Aslan's army supporting Peter. And Peter and the witch are battling it out. Only now she's not using her wand. She's using that stone knife which she killed Aslan with. And they're going at it. All right. So let's see what happens. We know what happens, but you know, you're in it. You're in the story. You're reading it every time. All right, here. Good questions from Ms. Ramunda. Let's see. Did Peter know where Aslan was? Is it important that Peter kept doing what Aslan told him to do anyway? Good questions. Okay, so let's think about this. Way back there, to the night when Aslan left to go meet the witch at the stone table, prior to that, he and the army and Peter had parked themselves further away. And Aslan had those conferences, those talks with Peter, just giving him instructions about where to put the army, some strategy, how to fight the witch, where to put the centaurs and the archers and all that kind of thing. So Aslan had been preparing Peter for this. Now imagine Peter's perspective when he gets up the next morning. There's no Aslan. Where did his sisters go? Lucy, Susan. He has no idea. But what he does know is there is a battle ahead that day, and he's got to lead. He's got to step up. He has to put his own worries aside, and he has to be confident and follow through with what Aslan told him to do, what Aslan instructed him to do. That's a lot to take. That's a lot of trust, I guess. Willing to obey even if you don't know all the details. You're trusting someone who is greater than you. Aslan was greater than Peter. Peter knew he could trust him, and he followed through and he did what he needed to do, even though he didn't know all the details. He didn't know where Aslan was. He didn't know where his sisters were. All he knew was the job that he was given. And he went at it. So is it important that Peter kept doing what Aslan told him to do anyway? Of course. If Peter had looked around that morning and said, Aslan's not here, Lucy and Susan aren't here, I'm going to go find them, and he left, what would the White Witch have done to Aslan's army? Decimated it, no doubt. Aldstone, killed, anything else, right? Or if he had just sat there in despair and not done anything. He didn't go to find Aslan. He didn't do anything, or he sat there in despair. He would be a prisoner as well, right? But he went ahead and did what he had to do. Good Peter, good leader. That's being a leader too. Doing what you need to do in the moment you need to do it, without stopping everything to satisfy maybe your own need for details. But you know, that does require that you really trust the person who assigned you a job or a duty. You have to really trust and have confidence that it's worth following that without knowing everything that's going on. It's hard to do. You really have to be careful who you choose to follow so that you know that you can trust them that way. You really need to be careful. Okay. Let's see, I've had lots of comments here today. It's wonderful. Katie says Peter is the oldest kid. Right, yes, Peter is the oldest. He is the oldest. All right, the battle must still be fought. Okay, so Aslan arrives, but it doesn't magically just stop everything. Everyone doesn't just stop and turn their heads and say, Aslan. Right? The battle's still going. So let's see what happens. Off my back, children, shouted Aslan. And they both tumbled off. Then with a roar that shook all Narnia, from the western lamppost to the shores of the eastern sea, the great beast flung himself upon the White Witch. Lucy saw her face lifted toward him for 1 second with the expression of terror and amazement. Then Lion and Witch had rolled over together, but with the witch underneath. And at the same moment, all warlike creatures whom Aslan had led from the witch's house rushed madly on the enemy lines. Dwarves with their battle axes, dogs with teeth, the giant with his club, and his feet also crushed dozens of the foe. Unicorns with their horns, centaurs with swords and hoofs, and Peter's tired army cheered, and the newcomers roared, and the enemy squealed and gibbered till the wood re-echoed with the din of that onset. Again, more great descriptions. Katie asks, how old is Aslan? Well, he is the son of the Emperor over the sea, and he knows about the magic, the deeper magic from before time, and all the runes that are carved spear deep in the stones of fire. I think stones of fire, something like that. I'm going to guess, I'm going to say that in some ways Aslan might be timeless. If he was around before time, he might be timeless. But I don't know if he would always have had a lion form. That's my guess. Other people may have another opinion. They may say that perhaps he came into being when Narnia came into being, because he does seem to be tied quite closely to Narnia. And again, this is something that was devised and thought of by C.S. Lewis and his ideas. So I would have to look and see. And unfortunately, today is our last day, so I can't say that I'll come back tomorrow and see if I could find out from like letters that C.S. Lewis might have written to decide about that for sure. I'm trying to think of the other stories and the other books without giving you spoilers, if there's something very definitive and exact in an answer I can give you. But I'm thinking that he, in some way, was Aslan himself before time. So I'm going to say he's timeless. He's not limited by time. So how old is Aslan? It's unknown. I don't think it's knowable. Okay. Another question from Tara, or Tara, not sure how you pronounce your name. Does the witch live after the battle, or did she die? Well, that is a question, a statement question that I'm going to address, because C.S. Lewis has chosen to not dwell on the demise of the witch. We are used to today in a lot of our stories, and really stories from all time, but movies, TV shows, that sort of thing, to have a splendidly, sometimes gory, but clear death of the bad guy, right? It's kind of satisfying to see the bad guy die. It really makes us feel relief. It makes us feel, oh, for sure, yeah, it's not coming back. You know how there are some movies or stories where it's not clear if the enemy has died, and then boom, you know, they do a jump scare on you later, and oh my gosh, I thought you were gone, I thought you were dead, and no, it's still alive, kind of a thing. So Lewis decided to not give a very descriptive ending to the witch, but this statement here in this reading, this paragraph, the lion and witch had rolled over, or together, but with the witch underneath. That's it. She's dead. And that's all he wrote about that action, but that's it. She is dead. She's gone. And she is gone for good. Okay. No, we know that the witch is dead, because if you think about it too, the rhymes and the prophecies that Beaver shared back in chapter 8, the Beavers shared, they did specifically say that it will be the end of her reign, evil will die, the witch will be dead. That when the four thrones, the sons of Adam and the daughters of Eve sit on the thrones at Cair Paravel, her reign will end and she will die, which was why she was so desperate to stop them. So here it is. This is her moment of death. Not very descriptive, but there it is. Okay. And imagine the one little bit of satisfaction we get is that Lucy sees on the witch's face the expression of terror and amazement, because of course she thought Aslan was dead and he is her greatest terror, her greatest enemy. And so that's really all the description and satisfaction we get. All right. But the battle keeps going. Even though the witch is dead, the other creatures don't just stop. They keep fighting. And the reinforcements that Aslan brought with him, they all jump into the fray. And it encourages Peter's army immensely. And here is an image of that. Okay. Let's keep going. The rescued rescues. So those who have been rescued rescue others. I think that's what that title means, right? So those who had been rescued from the castle are now coming and rescuing Peter's army. And this is after the battle. It was all Edmund's doing, Aslan, Peter was saying. We'd have been beaten if it hadn't been for him. The witch was turning our troops into stone right and left, but nothing would stop him. He fought his way through 3 ogres to where she was just turning one of your leopards into a statue. And when he reached her, he had sense to bring his sword smashing down on her wand instead of trying to go for her directly and simply getting made a statue himself for his pains. That was the mistake all the rest were making. Once her wand was broken, we began to have some chance, if we hadn't lost so many already. He was terribly wounded. We must go and see him. Okay. So this was Peter reporting in to Aslan, giving him the details of the battle, like a soldier, reporting to the person in command, saying this is what was going on, this is what happened, and showing that Edmund really came. He just came to the rescue in a way. He saved them all for that time being, because he was smart about it. He used his skills that he had. It really is clear that he has just put off all what Peter had kept saying, the beastly nature. He's being beastly, thinking of himself. Edmund is thinking not of himself anymore. He's thinking of the people around him, the people who rely on him, and the people who he cares about. And his quick thinking and his action has saved them all until Aslan could arrive. Wonderful. Katie notes that in the movie, the witch falls off a cliff and dies when Aslan roars. In one of the movies, that's true. That's how they chose to depict that. Yeah, when directors, producers, when people who are trying to adapt the story that's contained in a book to make it work on a movie screen or on a television screen, they will change things. Some things they change may work. Some things they change won't work. I used to get very frustrated when my favorite stories were ruined by being made into a movie. But I've realized, you know what? No matter what they do in a movie or a TV show, it doesn't change the book. The book is still there. The book is still there to enjoy, and that's what counts. That's what counts. And sometimes things are changed in movies and it works out great. All right, so let's find out about Edmund. There are always lessons to learn. That's true. You're never done learning and having to face challenges and kind of just have some self-control, self-discipline, and learning from the people around you, learning good lessons, really until the day you die. You're always going to be facing challenges and learning things, relearning some lessons maybe you learned a long time ago, but you forgot. So let's see what this is about. There are always lessons to learn. Okay. Right. Lucy, with her cordial, her gift from Father Christmas, has gone to Edmund. They've seen him deathly wounded. He would die, without care, for sure. And Lucy is reminded that she has her healing cordial from Father Christmas. Now is the time to use it. And so she does. She gives some to Edmund, and she's eagerly waiting. And Aslan says, "There are other people wounded," said Aslan, while she was still looking eagerly into Edmund's pale face and wondering if the cordial would have any result. "Yes, I know," said Lucy crossly. "Wait a minute." "Daughter of Eve," said Aslan in a graver voice, "others also are at the point of death. Must more people die for Edmund?" "Oh, I'm sorry, Aslan," said Lucy, getting up and going with him. And for the next half hour they were busy, she attending to the wounded while he restored those who had been turned into stone. Oh, what a little lesson to learn. And it's always interesting. Aslan, he doesn't scold, he doesn't react. He knows how to kind of get right to your heart, right? And he reminded Lucy that he had already died for Edmund. Oh, must more people die for Edmund? Wow, that really got her attention, didn't it? It really did. And she reacted. She responded properly. She responded positively. She didn't insist on her own way. She didn't stamp her feet. She didn't insist, but this is my brother. My brother's more important than anyone else. No, she knew. She knew that she had a job. Because if you think about it, all of Father Christmas's gifts were tied to jobs or duties that the children would have. Isn't that true? Peter with the sword, as a leader fighting the Maelgrim to save Susan, Susan with her horn to alert people to danger. If she doesn't act on that, if she doesn't use that horn, people are not alerted. And now Lucy with her cordial, and she can save so many lives using that, but she has to act. It's not like a magic spell she can cast all over everyone. She has to individually give care to each and every person because that was her job. That was her job, and she did it. Full redemption. Okay, let's see what this says. Okay. When at last she was free to come back to Edmund, she found him standing on his feet, not only healed of his wounds, but looking better than she had seen him look, oh, for ages. In fact, ever since his first term at that horrid school, which was where he had begun to go wrong. He had become his real old self again, and could look you in the face. And there on the field of battle, Aslan made him a knight. Does he know, whispered Lucy to Susan, what Aslan did for him? Does he know what the arrangement with the witch really was? We don't know. Well, let's see what happens. We know that Edmund came back and apologized. Aslan talked to him, remember, privately, and then went and apologized. And they all accepted his apology, the brother and the sisters, and they shook hands. But he was still kind of uncomfortable, and he kind of wouldn't look him in the eye, and they kind of were awkward. They felt awkward, right? Well, now after this healing cordial, and after Edmund had really proved himself, not just by saying sorry, but now he had acted on that. He had proved, he had taken action to show that he was on the right side now, that he was committed to that side fully, and he was ready to give his life for the right. And so now he had that confidence. He had that confidence to say, I can now feel much better about myself because I have really been redeemed and I have acted on being redeemed in a positive way, and I've shown that. And that's very important. That's a really good thing that C.S. Lewis is describing here. Okay. Oh, and another comment back from when I was talking about movies. Bella is mentioning Black Beauty was maybe disappointing or different from the book. Okay. I'm sure you all have examples of that. All right, so, and Lucy's wondering if Edmund really knows what Aslan did, how far he went. Okay, wrong made right. Here we go. That evening, after tea, the four children all managed to get down to the beach again and get their shoes and stockings off and feel the sand between their toes. But next day was more solemn, for then, in the great hall of Cair Paravel, that wonderful hall with the ivory roof and the west wall hung with peacock's feathers and the eastern door which looks towards the sea, in the presence of all their friends and to the sound of trumpets, Aslan solemnly crowned them and led them to the four thrones amid deafening shouts of "Long live King Peter! Long live Queen Susan! Long live King Edmund! Long live Queen Lucy!" Once a king or queen in Narnia, always a king or queen. Bear it well, sons of Adam. Bear it well, daughters of Eve, said Aslan. So the formalities took place, and they were crowned in this wonderful, beautiful place. And so the prophecy has been fulfilled. More beautiful descriptions. Not a tame lion. Let's see. How did they survive that? I would be dead. Oh, the battle. Yeah. Oh, deaf. I see. Yes, all the shouting, right? You could end up deaf. All right, not a tame lion. Oh, we're reminded of that again, right? But amid all these rejoicings, Aslan himself quietly slipped away. And when the kings and queens noticed that he wasn't there, they said nothing about it. For Mr. Beaver had warned them. He'll be coming and going, he had said. One day you'll see him and another you won't. He doesn't like being tied down, and of course he has other countries to attend to. It's quite all right. He'll often drop in, only you mustn't press him. He's wild, you know, not like a tame lion. Okay, we have that reminder that Aslan is going to be coming and going. He's not a pet. He's not even going to be a constant presence. They're going to have to step up and be kings and queens, right? And they're going to have to do their duty, but they know that he'll be coming and going because he's not a tame lion. Was there still more for the kings and queens to do? Well, and now, as you see, this story is nearly, but not quite, at an end. These two kings and two queens governed Narnia well, and long and happy was their reign. At first, much of their time was spent in seeking out the remnants of the White Witch's army and destroying them. And indeed, for a long time there would be news of evil things lurking in the wilder parts of the forest. A haunting here and a killing there, a glimpse of a werewolf one month and a rumor of a hag the next. But in the end, all that foul brood was stamped out, and they made good laws and kept the peace and saved good trees from being unnecessarily cut down and liberated young dwarfs and young satyrs from being sent to school and generally stopped busybodies and interferers and encouraged ordinary people who wanted to live and let live. Okay, so here's a list of their duties, a list of the things that they did. And of course, the one that just tickles me and you know, stands out is that the young dwarves and young satyrs are liberated from school. I think that touches on Edmund having such a horrible experience, and I'm sure the school that had been set up, maybe it was set up by the White Witch, and maybe it was a terrible and uncomfortable place. So that always tickles me. But again, we see the kings and queens doing their duty, doing their work to care for the people of Narnia and protect them. All right, was there still more for the kings and queens to become? So they did their job. What were they going to become? And they themselves grew and changed as the years passed over them. And Peter became a tall and deep-chested man and a great warrior, and he was called King Peter the Magnificent. And Susan grew into a tall and gracious woman with black hair that fell almost to her feet. And the kings of the countries beyond the sea began to send ambassadors asking for her hand in marriage. And she was called Susan the Gentle. Edmund was a graver and quieter man than Peter. and great in counsel and judgment. He was called King Edmund the Just. But as for Lucy, she was always gay and golden-haired, and all princes in those parts desired her to be her queen, and her own people called her Queen Lucy the Valiant. Valiant means kind of strong and courageous. And if I asked you, which one would you want to be known as? And it doesn't matter if you're a boy or girl. Would you want to be magnificent or gentle or just or valiant? Which would be your choice? I think I lean towards being just. I really like that role. I like advising people. I think it's if you have that skill and you can use it well, you can do a lot of good. Do a lot of good. And you can come up with your own idea for your own title. Wouldn't that be fun? What skill do I have, and how would it be valuable to other people around me? That's a good one to think of. All right. I'm going to keep moving so that we have a little time at the end. Coming home and what to do about it. Here we go. This is, of course, after they have grown and lived many years in Narnia. They're adults now, and their manner of speech has changed somewhat. C.S. Lewis has decided that they are going to start speaking in sort of a medieval sort of way, what we might kind of imagine it sounds like. I can tell you it doesn't quite sound like this, but that's okay. This is a fun story. I know not how it is, but this lamp on the post worketh upon me strangely. It runs in my mind that I have seen like before, as it were in a dream, or in the dream of a dream. Sir, answer they all, it is even so with us also. And more, said Queen Lucy, for it will not go out of my mind that if we pass this post and lantern, either we shall find strange adventures, or else some great change in our fortunes. Madam, said King Edmund, the like foreboding stirreth in my heart also. And in mine, fair brother, said King Peter. And in mine too, said Queen Lucy. Wherefore, by my counsel, we shall lightly return to our horses, and follow this white stag no further. Okay, so they've grown up. They all speak differently. They have been chasing the white stag, remember, on their horses, because they like to chase and have that sort of exercise, right? That skill, that challenge to ride on horseback very quickly, chasing something. They're chasing the white stag, and they happen upon the lamp post that was right outside of their entrance to Narnia, of course, back at the beginning. So they find the lamp post, and they don't have a memory of it. Things have changed. They have so immersed themselves into Narnia and their lands. The way they dress is Narnia. The way they speak has changed, and they've kind of forgotten who they were or where they came from. And of course, that has to be attributed. We have to say that's because of the magic of Narnia, right? Yes. Let's see. Gentle. Right. Their queen. You said their queen. Oh yes, I mistook it. Sorry, I misspoke. Thank you for the correction back. All right. So let's see what happens here. Oh, here's a picture of that part of the adventure. All right, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. So these kings and queens entered the thicket. They're going to explore. And before they had gone a score of paces, they all remembered that the thing they had seen was called a lamppost. And before they had gone 20 more, they noticed that they were making their way not through branches, but through coats. And the next moment, they all came tumbling out of a wardrobe door into the empty room. And they were no longer kings and queens in their hunting array, but just Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy in their old clothes. It was the same day and the same hour of the day on which they had all gone into the wardrobe to hide. Mrs. Macready and the visitors were still talking in the passage, but luckily they never came back into the empty room, and so the children weren't caught. There we have come to the end. Here's the question. Were they the same as they were before they entered Narnia? They had all their memories back. They were wearing their old clothes. They were now back to the age they were the moment they stepped into the wardrobe. All those years of living and experience, where did they go? Did they keep all of that experience and knowledge? Did they kind of turn into little kids again, small children? Because age and maturing and just living through time does change you. It does give you more information to work with. That's like when our parents say, we know better, or your teachers, because they have lived through more time. They've experienced more than kids have. So they have a lot more resources and information to pull from when they make decisions. So did the kids have that? I think they kind of did. They had at least some of it, I think. They had the memories of that land. But, well, let's read the rest and then we'll say the but. And that would have been the very end of the story if it hadn't been that they felt they really must explain to the professor why 4 of the coats out of his wardrobe were missing. And the professor, who was a very remarkable man, didn't tell them not to be silly or not to tell lies, but believed the whole story. No, he said, I don't think it will be any good trying to go back through the wardrobe to get the coats. You won't get into Narnia again by that route. Nor would the coats be much use of now if you did, eh? What's that? Yes, of course you'll get back to Narnia again someday. Once a king in Narnia, always a king in Narnia. Okay, so they decided to tell the professor because they knew that they remembered those 4 coats that they had put on because it was cold in Narnia, and they knew they were missing, and they thought that he might miss them, and so they told him everything, and he actually believed them. Okay, so as it is now, they have those memories, and the professor reminds them that once a king of Narnia, always a king of Narnia. And this is the last slide that Ms. Raimondo has left us with. Then in the name of Aslan, said Queen Susan, if you will all have it so, let us go on and take the adventure that shall fall to us. And I think that's Ms. Raimondo's wish to us all, that we will take the adventures before us like the children did and see what happens. So there is an end to our story. And we know that, yes, Tara knows that the professor knows all about Narnia. You're right. And we know that there are more stories, and we hope to share them with you in future camps. And it may be that we will pick this up not only in the summertime, but perhaps during the school year as well, and offer these courses. We're still shaping that behind the scenes. But there's many more stories, and I would just encourage you to read them. And I did want to, in the last moment, I know we're over a couple of moments, but yes, you're all hinting at The Magician's Nephew. It's a fabulous story. I did want to say one thing that was interesting about this story to me, and as a kid when I read it, I was always quite alarmed and concerned that the children, when they first entered Narnia, they were thrust into an adventure right away. Edmund was taken by the White Witch, and just things just seemed to just happen very quickly. But they never thought about going home. Now we know that they had been separated from their parents because of the war. That's why they were with the professor. They never really thought about going home. And when I was a small child, I was very tied to my home and to comfort and to feeling safe in my home. And so that always really bothered me. And if you think of other stories where people or children go into another world, sometimes that's the whole goal of the story. So if you think of something like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, she gets blown into the land of Oz by a tornado, and the whole story is about her trying to get home. I've always found it interesting that in this story, the children never really thought about going home. It never dawned on them. And that's unusual to me. But I was very glad when they were able to get home at the very end of the book. But I'll be honest with you, by that time, I was kind of sad that they left Narnia. So it's interesting when a book can pull you different ways in your emotions and in your reactions and how you feel. So next time you read a book, any book, whether it's a book by C.S. Lewis or another favorite author, kind of be aware of how it makes you feel and see if that author is able to pull you in different directions and see if you're satisfied with how it works out. You can immerse yourself in a story, but like we've done with our books here, with our summer reading camp, what we encourage you to do is to also step back and examine that story. Look at the words that that author chooses, how they describe things, the ideas that they share. Think about it and what it does to you. And that way you make a story your own and you develop the skills to enjoy books even more and go even more deeply into them. So thank you for being part of our Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe camp. We'd like to, let me advance the screen. I think, yes, we have, oh, here's the castle at the end. And we are going to learn to be kings and queens of our caravels. That's right, we have jobs to do, skills to use. And here is our reminders that we want to know more about you. Please email us. Email us questions and we'll do our best to answer them. We can even send you emails back. And don't forget that the Wrinkle in Time camp starts on Monday. So if you had enjoyed yourself for the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, I know you will enjoy yourself with our Wrinkle in Time camp. Thank you so much for joining us. And please enjoy the recorded presentations as often as you wish. And keep reading. Keep reading. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.